those of you who read a lot in this field will have read a lot that Julian actually writes. And I urge you, if you are on Tribunal, you can go and search, and it's on the website. A number of the articles Julian has written, and in addition he writes lovely case summaries. And also, if you quote him in your findings, I always hope that maybe it will be a less chance he'll review you. So always try that. So it is a bit intimidating following Julian, because I don't pretend to have as much knowledge as he does. Okay, my brief is to give you a real rundown on a topic which sounds quite vague, and in some ways it is. It's applying the doping rules. And let me just start by going to a few things that you all should know. This would work. And why do we have sports and have rules? Why do we have all of this? And the reality is that, as we know, everybody wants to play in a fair contest. And that's really why we have rules in sport. So whether it's a forward pass, or whether it's, we've got this thing called LBW, leg before wicket, Julian. It's in cricket. If it's outside the line and you're playing a shot, you can't be out. If the pitch is outside leg, you can't be out. But those are the rules, and they apply to everyone around the world, and that's how we ensure fairness in the game of cricket. Most of the time, it depends where the umpires come from. Anyway, the reality is rules are the soul of sport. I mean, it's the crux of sport. It's what makes it happen. And this is my kid, Matthew, my oldest son. I always get a picture of my kids in my presentations. This is Matthew playing for Western Province at this week. They had an interprovincial tournament in Cape Town. And they got knocked out on a penalty shootout, penalty flick shootout. He's bitterly disappointed, majorly disappointed. And afterwards, after the tournament, he said, "Dad, that was so unfair. It just was unfair." So I said, "Well, what was unfair about it?" He said, how can you lose on penalty flicks? He said, "It's a bit of luck, it's chance." I said, "Yeah, but think about it." I said, "Did the rule apply to everyone?" He said, "Yeah, but still. But still, it looks like that team went and for a whole week they just practiced penalty flicks. We should have played extra time." I said, "Yeah, but then the tournament would go into the next day just about." And I said to him, in typical parental wisdom, I said, fairness and what is nice are actually not the same thing. Something that is fair does not necessarily mean it's nice. And I said, you've experienced something that was not nice for you, you lost the penalty shootout, you're unhappy, but it was actually fair. The rule applied to everyone. And I think a lot of the time when we talk about in doping, and a lot of time when we are applying our rules, we are dealing with things which, this just seems so unfair, it's difficult, it's not nice, and we get those phrases sort of mixed up. And in a few moments, I'll go through a couple of cases that a few of us have been involved in. But you grapple with this concept of niceness, and you actually have to get rid of it and focus on, what is fairness in what we're dealing with. So for my son, it was a life lesson from sport. So it just shows you how wonderful sport is in that sense. And so every association we have has its rules. Whether it's rugby, whether it's cricket, whether it's hockey, whether it's cycling, whether it's swimming, they've all got their rules. And the reality is that doping regulations are part of these rules of sport. It's quite interesting. Khalid very kindly gave this Western Province team a whole lot of SAIDS towels. And the coach, when he was handing out the kit, said, "And we're very happy that we've got some SAIDS anti-doping towels, and this is a great lesson for you boys, because one day when you play professional sport, you could end up being tested." It's not necessarily part of what we're doing now. And I almost had to correct him. I said, "You know what, you're actually playing this tournament under a national federation. Strictly speaking, these rules also apply to these kids. Not that SAIDS is going to go and test, but SAIDS is testing at Craven Week. I don't know how far down you go. If you tested under 13 Craven Week, strictly speaking, you could. But there's this misconception that doping rules are something far away from reality. It's for the Armstrongs of this world and the Marion Joneses and all those kind of cases, not recognizing that these rules that we're talking about, that I'm going to be speaking about, effectively are rules of the sport. And as such, we as tribunal members are no different to a referee in a rugby match. We're part of that process. And I sometimes think the sooner the federations actually grasp that concept, the greater success we will just have from an educational point of view, because I don't think they see it like that. But effectively, we've all got the rules, what we're talking about in terms of our rules, code, also rules of the sport. Being effectively, how do we end up with these rules? How do we end up where we are? And what does it mean for us as tribunal members? And effectively, he spoke about the SAIDS Act, where effectively that authority comes from. And so I deleted those slides. I just wanted to add a couple of points to it. But effectively, if you go to the WADA code, how did we end up with WADA being this parent body? Well, effectively, it says, following entities shall be signatories. And there we have it, International Committee, National Olympic Committees, National Paralympics, etc., and National Anti-Doping Organizations. That's my emphasis, because that's who we are, as you say, are. We're a NADA, so to speak. And we need to accept the code by signing a declaration of acceptance. And that's how we end up where we are. Not to mention that our government has signed certain international conventions, which effectively have placed us under this obligation. Because I'm often confronted in discussions where people say, well, where does this all come from? Gee whiz, where do these rules come from? We know the ICC sits down every year and works out cricket rules, whether they're going to change a rule in one bouncer per over, etc. But where does this come from? And it comes to a sport from a very different angle. And again, I think that's one of our greatest challenges. The people who participate in the sport and the national federations don't necessarily understand it. Goes further, so the signatories implement applicable code provisions through policies, statutes, whatever it might be, is effectively what WADA is saying to us, and according to their authority within their relevant spheres of responsibility. And that's where we get to that nice debate of SA Rugby effectively passing a resolution to authorize SAIDS to manage this, and where Liam's study is interesting in the sense that only 20 bodies have effectively formally accepted the authority of SAIDS in that regard. SAIDS, yes, we're the entity designated by the government as the primary authority to adopt and implement these anti-doping rules. So it sets it out there, the conduct of hearings, sample collection, management of test results, all at a national level. And just for completeness of my little story here, we get to 2005, where SAIDS formally accepted the World Anti-Doping Code, and effectively the SAIDS rules were adopted and implemented, and very important words, in conformance with SAIDS responsibilities under the World Anti-Doping Code. And that's, to me, significant, because we have certain responsibilities that we need to adhere to. And it's very interesting how a lot of our discussion has gone, where effectively WADA sits here and says, yes, we would phone SAIDS and say, what the hell's going on with that decision? Maybe you guys want to look at it again. It's too harsh, or there's something wrong there. That very statement was fantastic, because it said to me, we need to recognize that authority coming down, like the parent phoning and saying, what the hell are you doing, kid? Type scenario. So this context, I think, is one of the most misunderstood contexts, just in terms of people who do participate in the sport. So that argument of the athlete, I had no idea what was going on here. And recent case where a lawyer said the athlete had no idea. The athlete was participating in a national championship and won a gold medal. Surely the athlete in that sport knew exactly that it happened to be powerlifting, which I, funny enough, Julian, know nothing about. So like, maybe yours is powerlifting sport. But effectively, don't tell me that athlete didn't know exactly how long he must hold the bar up there, etc., etc. Yet he's quite happy to put forward the argument. I had no idea that these were the type of rules that were governing it. Yet he's happy to be a participant in that event, where clearly these are part of those rules. And what makes this doping field so interesting is because they're specific to sports, and effectively they're distinct in nature. And I think one of the things, just touching on Alan's presentation earlier, that we cannot lose sight of. Let me start with this point. Most of the people here today, all of you, actually are probably not making any serious money out of anti-doping. Not like the guys in the gym pushing the stuff and making serious money. So you're all sitting here because you actually love sport. You might be lawyers or whatever, medical people, and you actually want to be involved in sport in some constructive way. That's why you're sitting here. And that in itself puts us in a very unique field. So it's not something that we have to make money out of, it's something that's quite unique. And so we've got this unique set of rules that we have to look at that apply internationally, that we have to have knowledge about and we have to implement. We've got this concept of strict liability. which, although it is present in other areas of law, it's quite unique in a way in how we have to deal with it. There's no other tribunal type situation in our law that I know of, and please you can correct me, where you're going to suddenly sit down in a tribunal situation and it's a strict liability type of tribunal. That means the way in which you manage and apply these rules is quite different to if you're sitting down to a disciplinary inquiry, where effectively the employee is going to get charged with a disciplinary offence, the company is going to present evidence, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, it's quite different. And I think that's something we can't lose sight of when we actually talk about the fairness that we have to ensure occurs in these inquiries.